Elizabeth Bennet, Emma Woodhouse, Marianne Dashwood. Jane Austen has been responsible for creating some of the most frequently adapted and analyzed women in the English literary canon. Along with BuzzFeed quizzes asking which Sex and the City or Little Women character you are, there is always fanfare about which Jane Austen heroine you are. But beyond the big three, well, mostly big two, who are the women of Jane Austen's completed novels? How do they reveal to us, her modern audience, any insight into her growth as an author, her politics, and just how she feels about what makes a girl boss and a hashtag girl boss? This is Austen's Ladies' Night. Oh, what a night. Let's go in reverse cool girl order and start with Fanny Price, the heroine of Austen's second longest novel, Mansfield Park. Unlike a lot of Austen's other protagonists, Fanny is poor, and is only spared an orphan's existence because her aunt married well. She is brought in as the poor cousin to the rich Bertram family to be a companion to their daughters. All the while, Fanny is constantly being reminded by everyone, especially her aunt Mrs. Norris, that she is there as charity. She doesn't belong. Well, almost everyone but her cousin Edmund, who is her love interest in the story. And yes, I said cousin. First cousin. But it's Regency era England, and they are pretty okay with that. Write your think pieces. Fanny is not an active player in her story. Years of being told she is nothing has done immense damage to her self-esteem. As a result, the reader is constantly in her head, frustrated at how little mobility Fanny has to change her fate. In the Journal of the 18th Century, George Haggerty says of Fanny, Austen creates a heroine who stands apart from the central action of the narrative. None of her other heroines behave this way, but then none of them is wrenched out of her home and forced to come to terms with a family in which she is not fully welcome. The novel shows nothing more vividly than it shows Fanny's mettle, for even when she is most frustrating, she is struggling to be herself in a world that is distinctly unfriendly. In a sense, the real action of the novel takes place in Fanny's responses to everything around her. For if she is shunted off to the side of what seems at times like the main action of the novel, then so are the readers who attend to her. What makes Fanny interesting from a character standpoint is she is a victim of emotional abuse. She has been mistreated so deeply, but remains almost martyr-like in her devotion to the family. We also see that the Bertrams may be rich but have no moral fortitude, which might be Austen's own political commentary, since it is established that part of their money comes from slavery. Clara Calvo, professor of English at the University of Marseille, has called Fanny priggish, but I think what makes Fanny so unlikable is that she's not Gilmore Girls poor, that noble wish fulfillment poor where you somehow pulled yourself up by your bootstraps, are endlessly witty, and you have your pick of fine suitors. Nah. Fanny is broken and does not have the mobility, money, or opportunities to have more in her life. She can only endure because that is what she's been trained to do. It's not fun, but it's real. Continuing our class discourse, there is Anne Elliot, the heroine of Persuasion. Persuasion was the final completed novel to be published by Austen, and in it you see the continued evolution of Austen as a writer. Anne Elliot is 27 years old when we meet her, unmarried, so she's basically a hashtag spinster to everyone around her. We find out that she was once engaged to marry a man named Frederick Wentworth, a young, fine, common naval officer who was clever but poor. Sadly, the people in Anne's life had never seen Aladdin and persuaded her to break up the engagement. Now, nearly a decade later, Wentworth is a self-made rich hottie and a Navy captain. So now Anne is singing Skater Boy to herself, watching the guys she used to know be hot and cool and rich. Also, is Skater Boy kind of an adaptation of Persuasion? Let us know in the comments below. Class-wise, Austen tears the hereditary aristocracy to shreds and portrays its men as either villains, wasteful, or vain, in contrast to Wentworth, who created his own money. He's working class, baby. Unlike the rest of Austen's heroines, it's Anne who comes from money and privilege, and her partner is the lower class person. Unlike Darcy or Edmund or any of the other men in Austen's novels, Wentworth isn't a savior from poverty. He is a savior from blind elitism. And through Austen's very insular writing of Anne, we get a character who is considered to be the most perceptive of Austen's heroines. As Harvard professor Deirdre Shauna Lynch explains, Austen cast her protagonists as the silent and sympathetic observers of other people's stories, and the repositories of their secrets. Their participation in situations of spectership and secret sharing endows Anne Elliot and Eleanor Dashwood, in particular, with the qualities that novel readers in Austen's lifetime were learning to associate with third-person narrators. Likewise, the capacity that each has for a self-possession that seems to numb her sense of self-interest. Like Fanny, Anne is not a sexy heroine, but she represents the growth of Austen's authorship. Her work was very class-conscious, and these two books have some of her most thoughtful commentary on class, wealth, and love. And then you get Northanger Abbey. Northanger Abbey is a satirical coming-of-age novel that pokes fun at Gothic novels. But let's be real here, it's a YA novel. Our leading lady, Catherine Morland, is a heroine in training who loves Gothic novels a lot. Due to her lack of real-life perspective, coupled with a rampant imagination, she creates realities in her mind in order to fill the gaps within her own social naivete, for better or for worse. Catherine is fine. She's kind of boring because her story doesn't have that many real stakes. She's just silly and eventually stops being silly. Buildings Roman, classic, it's good. If anything, what makes Abby a fun novel is seeing how petty Jane Austen felt about the Gothic novel with its overly perfect characters. Catherine is made plain and middle class. Her love interest, Henry Tinley, is a passive soft boy instead of some handsome, brave, hyper-masculine man. It is interesting as literature, but not as a story. The big three of Jane Austen's novels are Emma, Pride and Prejudice, and Sense and Sensibility. If they were 90s, 2000s teen movies, they would be Jawbreaker, Mean Girls, and Clueless, respectively. Emma is the jawbreaker of the big three, in my opinion, of Jane Austen's novels, because while it is a teen classic, it's a little more cutthroat, especially because while people might find Fanny boring and Anne a little too clean-cut, and Catherine is just Catherine, Emma is kind of a mean girl, and that has been rubbing people wrong since 1815. And yes, I know that Clueless is based on Emma, but for the sake of this argument, the point is moot. I'm making a larger point. But yes, Clueless is based on Emma and it's good. Emma is rich. In fact, the novel begins with saying that Emma Woodhouse is handsome, clever, and rich, with a comfortable home and a happy disposition, and had lived nearly 21 years in the world with very little to distress or vex her. Must be nice. Throughout the novel, convincing herself that she is an apt matchmaker, Emma attempts to manipulate the love life of her friend, Harriet Smith. However, due to her elitism, she almost ruins Harriet's own chance for happiness when the girl falls in love with a handsome farm boy who Emma deems not socially good enough for her friend. And it's like, Emma, it's not about you. Jane Austen even said that with Emma, she wanted to create a heroine that only she would like. Emma is spoiled, overconfident, and likes to meddle in the lives of people like dolls because she simply has the standing in society to do so. But that is intentional. As Austen scholar John Mullen so aptly puts it concerning Emma's snobbery, of course she is, but Austen, with a refusal of moralism worthy of Flaubert, abandons her protagonist to her snobbery and confidently risks inciting foolish readers to think that the author must be a snob too. Emma's snobbery pervades the novel. From that moment, we hear Mrs. Goddard, the mistress of the little girls' boarding school, and Mrs. and Miss Bates described as the most comatable denizens of Highbury, meaning that they are at the beck and call of Emma and her hypochondriac father. Austen has the integrity to make Emma snobbish even when she is in the right. This might come as a shock, but female characters are allowed to be unlikable. Character development is good, actually. Emma grows from being a snob to a more thoughtful person. It's called a character journey. Sense and Sensibility is Austen's first novel, and it is a very good one, my personal favorite. It gave us the Dashwoods and the two important sisters of the novel, Elinor and Marianne, who encompass the titular sense and sensibility traits. Elinor is a pragmatic softie who tries to hold it together, but she is brimming with lust and just wants to hold hands very much with Edward Ferrars. And in the novel, she finds out Edward made a promise to marry Lucy Steele when he was younger, even though he doesn't want it anymore. And he forces himself to give up Elinor, and they're both sad about it, but in the end, they both make noble decisions and were rewarded for it with a happily ever after. It's very sweet, but that's not what we're here to talk about for real, for real. We're here to talk about Marianne and Willoughby. Marianne meets a bad boy named John Willoughby, and she falls in love with F-Boy so hard. It's like F-Boy Island out there. But later finds out that he is not that innocent. He is a rake who has already seduced a 15-year-old girl and then abandoned her even though she was pregnant. He's a jerk. He was cut off from his family and therefore is in need of a rich wife. He does love Marianne, but she broke. So he abandons her, and this leads to Marianne becoming distraught, but eventually she returns the affections of the older, more stable, and secretly low-key Byronic Colonel Brandon, played in the movie by Alan Rickman, rest in power, and it's great. This ending has been seen as controversial for some readers that feel Marianne is shamed into not loving as deeply. A lot of fanfic explores the idea of Willoughby being redeemed. Why is that explored and even hinted at, but not canon? Well, it's because people want a good bad boy return story. Cultural historian and literary critic Mary Pouvet makes the following point. Consistently, Elinor makes the prudent choice, even when doing so is painful. Almost as consistently, Marianne's decisions are self-indulgent and harmful, either to herself or to someone else. But this neat design is less stable than an absolute and authoritative moral system would seem to require. Many readers have found Marianne's spirit more appealing than Elinor's cautious, prim, and even repressive reserve, and they have found Marianne's passionate romance with Willoughby more attractive than the prolonged frustration to which Elinor submits. Marianne's passion in young love is engaging and beautiful in some ways, especially since she does meet a great love. But the moral is not that loving deeply is bad. Instead, it is more that love without respect and morality means nothing. Which brings us to Elizabeth Bennet, the final boss of Jane Austen heroines, Lizzie the Bennet, the protagonist of Jane Austen's second novel, Pride and Prejudice. Published in 1813, Pride and Prejudice concerns itself with the fortunes and misfortunes of the Bennet family. The family's patriarch, Mr. Bennet, is a gentleman farmer with a modest income of £2,000 a year and 5 daughters, meaning none of his children can legally inherit any of it because, you guessed it, systematic misogyny. You've seen Downton Abbey, you know how it goes. Likewise, Mrs. Bennet has no fortune to her name, and thus the predicament that spurs on the plot. Will the Bennet sisters be able to find suitors rich enough to care for them before their father dies? Enter Lizzie Bennet, the sarcastic, high-spirited second daughter who watches as her older sister Jane falls for the gentle Mr. Bingley, a wealthy bachelor that has moved into a nearby estate, who, much to Lizzie's chagrin, seems to always be accompanied by his grumpy and blunt friend Fitzwilliam Darcy, Like, who does he think he is or something? Much of the novel follows the constant misunderstandings and reconciliations between Lizzie and Mr. Darcy as they grow close to one another, while family and society seem to do everything they can to keep them apart. Whether it's Mrs. Bennet's attempt to marry Lizzie to her male cousin, set to inherit the Bennet estate, ew mom, no, Collins is gross. Mr. Bingley's vain sister who also has her eye on Mr. Darcy, back off, or Mr. Darcy's cold aunt who would have him marry her sickly daughter Anne, no, Lizzie and Darcy, XOXO. Lizzie is the most popular Austen heroine. Why? Is it because she made Darcy into a simp? Is it because she has the best bars? Is it because she gives lower middle class brown-haired girls hope that they can marry into wealth, or at least an Avenger? Not unlike Elinor, Lizzie's well-being is outwardly presented as solely dependent on good marriage and her love for someone above her social standing, says Jane Austen scholar Claudia L. Johnson. In all of Austen's novels, but especially in Pride and Prejudice, pursuing happiness is the business of life. Austen trots out character after character before our attention so we may consider what pleases or conversely vexes and mortifies them, thus inviting us to assess the quality and durability of their happiness. What sets Lizzie apart from other Jane Austen heroines is her absolute disregard for the mores of courtship and station that would have added to Elinor's distress. Lizzie doggedly listens to no one. She spurns the snobbery of Miss Bingley, bites back at Mr. Darcy's aunt when she is mocked. She is not gifted with the station Emma has, nor does she have any taste for social engineering. While it still ultimately has to bend to early 19th century convictions, Lizzie is the mistress of her own happiness in Pride and Prejudice in a way that her other beloved fellow female characters are not. And the novel asks us to consider what happiness means in a world with limited opportunity. To an extent, all the Bennet sisters go through this journey. Lydia's scandalous love affair versus what society would say of it, quiet moralizing Mary and her disinterest in love games, and Jane, whose happy ending is dangled in front of her from the very beginning and might have been the protagonist in any other book. And then there's Mrs. Bennet. Do we have time to discuss Mrs. Bennet? Do I have the energy? Do I have the mental energy to discuss whether or not she's a villainous caricature or a misunderstood mother doing the best she can? No, I do not. Academic and writer Janet Todd condenses the appeal of Jane Austen's protagonists as such. What strikes me as contributing most to Jane Austen's universal popularity is her ability to create the illusion of psychologically believable and self-reflecting characters. Her novels are investigations of selfhood, particularly female, the oscillating relationship of feeling and reason, the interaction of present and memory, and the constant negotiation between desire and society. And as much as the world has changed over the last 200 years, along with societal expectations of how women are supposed to behave, and what roles and dreams they can aspire to, the conflict between duty and self-fulfillment will always be present. And so, the eternal appeal of dance cards, rainy encounters with the love of your life, and the enduring spirit of Jane Austen's characters remains. When you look at the heroines of Jane Austen's books, you see the evolution of a fiercely independent author building upon the foundation of female authors before her. Shout out to Frances Burney, who we never covered on this show, but I love, and she's great. Wikipedia her. Austen died at 41 years old. If she had lived, who knows what kind of heroine she would have created, what politics she would have explored. But in 6 novels, she has delivered the stories of 6 amazing women who make up the most amazing BuzzFeed personality quiz that everyone cheats at anyway to get Lizzie Bennet in the end. Before you go, we wanted to invite you to participate in PBS Digital Studios' annual audience survey. Your feedback really helps us understand what our audience is interested in, so we can give you more of it. You even get to vote on potential new shows. There's a link in the description below. If you have a few minutes, we love your input. Thanks!